So, just a quick disclaimer. This will be a longer video. Make sure you guys grab your snacks, popcorn, your dinner, your protein shake, whatever it is. Make sure you guys grab it, and let's get right into the video. Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Tyrone back with Tech Life, and RootMetrics finally released some of their first half 2024 findings. The full report has not yet released, and I also believe all of states and market area testing has not been released yet, but majority of them are out to give us an idea and understanding of how it went for the carriers. One thing I will say in this video, and we're going to make separate videos on the other carriers, T-Mobile is now a competitive threat, if you will, on RootMetrics testing. They are now competitively competing in the areas. Before, that was never the case. Yeah, they would win some market areas here and there, and they'd win some cities outright. They would tie some, but very little, right? Very little. During LTE, they were pretty much non-existent. Never even a thought when it came to the state scores. You wouldn't even put them in the same conversation. Well, that has now changed. But I will be objective. They have work to do. Also, I will throw in, I have to throw this in because I saw it on the document, the calling percentage that is weighed in on the overall score is no longer the same. So T-Mobile, they do struggle with calling, although I will also say I checked some individual markets. They are improving the calling scores. So that's one thing to point out, right? On the overall score of each market, the calling is now less of a percentage that on how they weigh the overall scoring. So I will throw that in because I saw that. So that did officially happen. And then the video performance, the new category that they added, is also now, that adds to the overall score as well, which T-Mobile does perform very well on a market level in the markets that I did check. So I want to scroll through this briefly. I'm not going to go through the individual markets. It's just going to be too long of a video. I know I made a disclaimer that this would be a long video, but I don't want it to be too long. But what you will see, and I will throw it in, Verizon will still win the metros. Let's be clear about that. Verizon still has the most metro wins out of all the carriers. But you will see Washington, Tulsa. There's going to be new cities like Trenton, New Jersey, as an example. Toledo, Stockton. I mean, you see a lot of Magenta and a lot of Verizon. Now, AT&T, they're starting to fall off. But this should be a wake-up call to AT&T to light a fire under their asses. Like, hey, we need to get going. We need to get this going. Our big project, our massive project, Nokia to Ericsson conversion, we need to get that over with. But I predict that during that process, right, through 2026, they probably are going to get hurt by that because, like I said, there's going to be some interruptions during the upgrades, which will probably lower the AT&T scores in a lot of markets, in a lot of Nokia markets. So again, I will scroll through this briefly. Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, again, T-Mobile. It's T-Mobile, Oklahoma outright. Nashville, Memphis, Louisville, Los Angeles. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. This is the most #1 outright wins and ties that I've ever seen T-Mobile get on RootMetrics ever. In the history of RootMetrics testing, this is the most by far. Hamptons, I mean, you guys see it. And I'll leave a link to this in the description. You guys can check out the scores for yourselves, the city you're in. This is the most, like I said, that Cleveland outright, that T-Mobile has ever got outright wins or ties. Chicago, Chattanooga, Charlotte, Bakersfield. I mean, it's just Antioch, California. That's a new city, by the way. Allentown, Albuquerque, Akron. I mean, it's all there. And then the state scores, the state testing, right? That was a big negative for T-Mobile, no matter how you looked at it. If they gained a little momentum on the metro side during LTE, the states, I mean, T-Mobile didn't even compete at all. They tied 7 states in the first half of 2024. They tied 7, and they improved in several others. In some of the other ones, they surpassed AT&T as the number 2 carrier in the state. Florida, as an example. Florida, T-Mobile now beats AT&T by 0.1, and they're closing the gap to Verizon. Maine, they tied second place with Verizon, but they beat Verizon in the overall score by 0.1. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm telling you right now, T-Mobile is improving at a very fast clip, and it's all coming together even before, and I will point that out in this video, even before the U.S. Cellular deal closes, even before T-Mobile announces a higher site count in early fall, meaning macros, more macros. Even before T-Mobile initiates and orders more multi-gig backhaul provisioning. Even before T-Mobile goes and tries to get more N41 contiguous and work out deals with third parties. Even before T-Mobile initiates additional C-RAN to be deployed in these markets. T-Mobile is improving at a very fast clip, and I wanted to emphasize that in this video because that's been a problem for many years. Sprint, T-Mobile, they just were never that competitive, so you really just couldn't freely choose based on price and features and value because you had to keep the network in consideration. You needed it to work where you live, work, and play. And for a large part of LTE and even backtracking to 3G, 2G, whatever, they just weren't competitive, right? The smaller 2 players. They were good in some areas, but then you travel to another area and it was a complete bust. And especially looking at it on a national scale, 9 times out of 10, the other carriers in AT&T and Verizon, they were just simply better wherever you point it, right? There were going to be more areas that those 2 were just better, especially Verizon. But now that's starting to change. So as the state scores get better for T-Mobile, as the metro scores get closer and closer between the competition. I'll point out an example, right? There are some markets where T-Mobile is first, Verizon second, AT&T third, and the score is like 99.6, 99.4, 99.2, right? I mean, the difference is minimal between the carriers in that city, as an example. So now you can choose price, value, perk, customer service. Okay, I like this customer service better. The overall performance is very similar on each of the networks. And that's what Root Metrics is really pointing out in their testing. No matter who you choose, you should have a great experience. And I'll be very honest with you, that just wasn't in the past, that just wasn't the case. Very early in 2011, 2012, when Root Metrics started testing, I mean, you would see Verizon score like an 85. You would see Cricket back then when they had their CDMA network at a 54. Sprint would be at a 69. AT&T would be at a 74. T-Mobile would be at a 66. I mean, there were just huge wide gaps in the testing back then, and it would, in a real world, it would result in that big of a discrepancy. You would have some areas work really well, and then others, you needed Verizon. You just had to have them. So then many people were just like, well, I'm just going to get Verizon. You know, I don't want to pay for 2 separate services. And at that time, you know, dual SIM and all that stuff wasn't really a big thing, especially eSIM. So people are just, I'm going to just get Verizon. If I have to get a second phone with them, I might as well just move my main line to them, right? So again, not to make this video too long, T-Mobile is improving, and we'll have a video for Verizon and we'll have a separate one for AT&T. T-Mobile is improving. We see it on other third parties, right? And even though the other third parties are crowdsourced, not scientific, but we see T-Mobile holding their speed, which is still important. You need that, right? With all these extra connections, FWA, T-Mobile is either holding their speed or they're improving. They're getting faster. So we're seeing that. We're seeing that on OpenSignal. We're seeing that through Ookla. Now, RootMetrics released their report, right? Well, their city reports. They still haven't released the overall report. I'm sure we'll get that next week. And we're seeing T-Mobile improving on all of the other metrics: accessibility, reliability, data speeds, network speeds, data performance, video performance. T-Mobile is improving across the board. Like I said, most #1 ties, most outright wins that I've ever seen on RootMetrics for them. And then 7 #1 ties on the state scores. Now, you could say that that could be contributed because the calling has less of a weigh-in on the overall score. You can make that argument. I mean, that's up to you. There's always going to be an excuse, but T-Mobile is improving nonetheless. I see calling scores go up for them. They won Houston outright. They won Dallas outright. They won Cleveland outright. I mean, just many wins. And calling was in the 99s. That is the highest score, arguably, in those areas in a long time. So could that potentially drop again with voice over NR? It's very possible. They have to iron out the small issues, and they will, right? But they have the capacity now. So during LTE, there was a congestion issue. They had 2 20 megahertz channel carriers of bandwidth on midband. In some areas it was 15 by 15. Most it was band 4 at 20, band 2 at 20. And those were starting to get really congested. They just were. They were loading up the network too quickly. They were too cheap, if you will, disruptive with the uncarrier movement. And people started loading up the network. And that caused a lot of issues for calling. Right? Even if you had it on the higher QCI with higher priority, it just wasn't gonna work as good, and it showed. Right now, they have the capacity piece, they have the EVS, they got all the latest technology for calling, and it's gonna start getting better. It's gonna start getting more reliable. The voice quality should get better with voice over NR, especially once you move that off of LTE, right? Because if you're not on voice over NR and you're on NSA, when you get on the call, you're dropping off of all of the bandwidth of 5G pretty much, and you're back on voice over LTE. Now your speeds are going to be drastically slower, and that calling experience is not going to be as great once you are on voice over NR with all of the bandwidth that they have on air. So they have the capacity to support whatever technology, future technology calling will present, HD voice, whatever. They will have the capacity now with this N41, and we still haven't even got, I didn't even disclose that in that part. We still haven't seen any C-band, significant C-band and DoD deployments. They still have that spectrum, and they're already improving as significantly as they are. So it's a bright future for T-Mobile, very exciting, right? We still have big announcements coming in the fall. So they're just rolling along. Eventually, it's going to turn into a well-oiled machine, if it isn't that already, right? They're just going to keep taking customers. They're going to keep competing. They're going to keep piling more spectrum onto the network, keep introducing more backhaul, right? More multi-gig backhaul. So all of that is on the way, and we're seeing that on the route testing. So like I said, I'll leave a link to this in the description. I don't want the video to get too crazy long, but appreciate you guys for sticking around. Hopefully you enjoyed your dinner, shake, whatever during this video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, share, subscribe if you are new to the channel. Follow my social media outlets. This is Tyrone with Tech Life, and I will see y'all in the next one. Peace.